Hello, Scott here, and welcome to another episode of It's Pronounced Zine, a series where I take a deep dive into old school magazines, fanzines, and other periodicals, and try to see what wisdom or treasures may lie within. And today, we are taking a look at Different Worlds, Issue 3, June-July 1979. Featuring articles on Bushido, Dungeons & Dragons, Bunnies and Burrows, and RuneQuest. So, what are we looking at here when we first take a look at this issue of Different Worlds? Well, it is a fantastic cover. The cover which was done by, oh God, I forget his last name. Hopefully it's in here, but as you can see, it's signed by Cleric in 1978. And it quite literally epitomizes a lot of the old school artwork that we used to see that has kind of become almost impossible to find in modern day RPGs and magazines. And it also kind of gives a bit of flair in regards to old school sci-fi books and novels. And just a kind of gonzo-esque mishmash of just everything here in the piece. Not really sure what's going on with it, but to be perfectly honest, you really don't care because it is absolutely awesome. So just kind of appreciating this piece a little bit more. We have some sort of, I would imagine, some sort of alien or space traveler or fantasy traveler through time who seems to be standing. Oh, okay, so it's some sort of creature, as we can tell by the clawed feet here in the hand. So yes, some sort of lizard-type creature with a helmet. Taking a look at some sort of bio-organic robot crash, or is there something crawling out of this cavern here? Again, who knows? Because who cares? It is awesome. So, let's take a look at the inside cover of what we have. So, obviously, there's going to be advertisements and old school ones of that in these issues. 1979, there is an advertisement on the inside cover for Flying Buffalo out of Scottsdale, Arizona. Pretty much focusing on Tunnels and Trolls, which you could get in 1979 for $4 by Ken St. Andre, along with some dungeons and also quite a variety of solitaire dungeons, which Tunnels and Trolls, I believe, was fairly big on, even way back in the day. I mean, there is a huge popularity and want for solo RPG games these days, and a lot of companies are presenting solo GM oracles to complement their games. But way back when, Tunnels and Trolls, as you can see here, from Buffalo Castle to Sorcerer Solitaire, did scratch that itch for a lot of people who were looking for just singular games to play that were a little bit more than your standard choose-your-own-adventure game book. So, all right. So, and then on the first page, we've got an advertisement for Gen Con 12 at the University of Wisconsin Parkside, August 16th through 1979. Presenting dealers, seminars, board games, giant dungeons and giant dungeons and D&D tournaments, miniatures, role-playing, and new game releases. Everything you ever wanted in a game convention and more. Each conventioneer will receive a book of coupons worth $10, redeemable with any dealer in the exhibit area. Just a $10 pre-registration fee and $15 at the door. Oh, excuse me. The allergies are kicking in. Yeah, I mean, of course, 1979 money, do the conversion. I don't know what it would be, but still, I would imagine it was quite a bargain back in the day, as you weren't paying as much as you would be today when it comes to Gen Con. Okay. So, contents of Different Worlds, June, July 1979. So what are they focusing on? We've got articles, a review of Bushido, My Life in Roleplaying, which was an ongoing series, I believe, of various creators at the time giving just general impressions, opinions, and maybe some advice regarding role-playing games. Excuse me. I may need to have some water during this. But moving on, Research and Rules by Steve Marsh, Specialty Mages Part 3 by Mike Gunderloy. Yep. Role-Playing, How to Do It by Clint Bigglestone. Druid's Valley by B. Dennis Sustare. The Three-Feathered Rivals Cult by Raymond Turney. And a new Cleric Cure System by John T. Sapienza Jr., along with your regular features of editorials, quick plugs, game cons, a letter from Gigi, subscription info, and different views. So the cover was by Tom Clark. I tried to look up Tom Clark, and there were a few other offerings of this, this sci-fi fantasy art style, but I really couldn't find a lot of them. I mean, I didn't do a deep dive on the internet, but very, very talented individual. I mean, this is just fantastic. It evokes, so many different types of emotions and feelings and interpretations, and was hoping to see a lot more of that. So maybe I'll do a little bit more, or if someone knows, they can point me towards more examples of his artwork. And carrying on. So here we are. We have the editorial page by one Tadashi Ahara. And he is going to be asking for players wanted. So again, as I'm going through these, this is not going to be a word for word read through of it, just kind of highlighting certain things and focusing on things that I might think might be interesting, or as stated, might be a little bit of a treasure or a little bit of wisdom from the past. So, what's here in the editorial? Players wanted. From time to time, we receive letters bemoaning the lack of people to play games with, and that continues on. That has not changed since 1979. There we go, a little better. There are several avenues one can pursue in locating gaming partners or groups. There are magazines like The Dragon and The General that list game players. Your local game store should be helpful in furnishing contacts. Most have bulletin boards for notices of people looking for other players. The most effective way of meeting people is by attending local game conventions. Okay, well. The major purpose of a game con is to get gamers together and have fun. People who live anywhere except the most rural of areas should have very little difficulty in finding a nearby con. Okay, were there more cons back then? Who knows? But if you wish, different worlds will run notices for our readers that are looking for other gamers. Send us your name, address, so on and so forth. Okay, so he's just offering a service to the readers to help connect players together. And I often kind of just, wonder, obviously there are plenty of these people are still around. I still kind of wonder if they knew back in the day that with the advent of online gaming and connecting people together and making it's so much easier to get people together to play RPGs who otherwise can't. And yeah, I know it's not the same as playing at a regular table, but I mean, if that's your only option, then that's better than nothing. So, all right. So past, present, and future. The comments on the first issue are in. Most liked it. Praises were lavished. Some did not like it for the most part, and criticisms were lashed accordingly. A few missed the point entirely, and their comments did not seem to make any sense. Representative letters have been published in this issue. See different views. I will leave it up to you to comment on their comments. Admittingly, there were a few problems with the first issue, and these can be attributed to inexperience. We hope we have corrected all of them to your satisfaction. So, all right. So, Bushido, a review. Now, I know of Bushido. I'm not familiar with the game. I have not read it, nor have I played it. Obviously, it is a fantasy RPG, which has a medieval Japan theme to it. So, and my general knowledge of it is it is an enjoyable game, but it definitely has a lot of the I guess, a bit of detail involved with it. Can be a tad confusing. as a lot of the old school games are, and the rules can be a bit much to grasp or handle. So, but this is coming from people that I know today. So I was just a bit curious if that rings true from a review from the past. So let's see here. We'll skip over some of this. So yes, Bushido is a fantasy RPG recreating the legendary world of medieval Japan, written by Paul Hume and Bob Charette. It consists of 2 8.5 by 5.5 saddled staple booklets packaged in a Ziploc bag. Book 1, entitled The Heroes of Nippon, is 72 pages, and The Land of Nippon is 60 pages long. So, the rules themselves are well written and logically ordered, though the authors choose not to employ a formal system of organization. Okay. If a player has a question, he can generally use the table of contents to get within a few pages of the rules he's looking for. The text adequately explains the tables and charts, but the lack of consolidated table selection slows play. Another minor flaw exists in that the authors use quite a few exotic abbreviations without listing their meanings in one accessible place. All right. And let's see here. And we'll just maybe skip to the end. Let's see here. RuneQuest and Dungeons and Dragons typify two styles of roleplay which are different in mechanics and philosophies, specific expertise versus general experience levels, so on and so forth. And Bushido, Hume and Charette have produced a well-knit integration of elements from each of these styles and provided a fairly complete and playable social milieu for the characters to operate within. For these reasons, I highly recommend Bushido to people who are interested in running a fantasy campaign based primarily on the Japanese mythos and to people who are interested in the art of RPG design. However, the basic chance of success mechanism is reversal of the die rolling conventions of both RuneQuest and Dungeons & Dragons, so more work would be required before a person could adapt material from Bushido into a campaign based on either of these two systems. Okay. So, again, not going to go into the details because he kind of just describes the game itself, but seems to have a fairly, a fairly decent opinion of it. And other than a couple foibles, can definitely recommend it as it is back in 1979. So, all right. So, Different Worlds, special feature, My Life in Role-Playing 3. So, I imagine that there is previous editions of the special feature, but this one focuses on, and it looks like the person who previously owned this book was a fan of Dave Arneson. So, we'll touch on this a bit. He does go on and on and on, but maybe we'll get a little bit of highlights here. So, Dave Arneson, well, here he is, the man who started it all. Since he needs no introduction, read on. Blackmore. All right, so, and these are the words of the authors or the creators themselves. So, once upon a time, in a deep, dark basement in the Midwest, a small group of wargamers assembled to fight out a 20-millimeter Napoleonic battle for a campaign that had been going on for some years. With their eyes beheld what was not a neatly drawn map of Central Europe with hundreds of figures deployed, but rather a medieval castle model surrounded by a small town and scattered woods. Thus aroused and suspecting that the strategic campaign's referee intended to use real terrain again, something that had not been done for some time, or rather that, horror upon horror, a Brownstein. Presenting each with a 4-inch by 5-inch cards, upon which were various cryptic headings, classifications, and numbers, the assembled players embarked upon the exploration of an underground labyrinth which lay beneath the castle and town. With a minimum of coercion from the referee, me, play began, and shortly a new phenomenon appeared in the Midwest: fantasy role-playing adventures. Serried ranks of Napoleonic cavalry and infantry disappeared for quite some time, and the first fantasy referee quickly found that refereeing of such a game devoured incredible amounts of time. One player would, in fact, call in after reaching his guard job and play by phone for hours. Persons would stop by to play day after day. Some 2 to 3 months later, it's all just sort of a blur now, the first referee collapsed in silly giggling and announced the destruction of the entire world or some such nonsense. Well, he needed a rest, but by then various dungeons were appearing. A space campaign was begun. Others were allowed to use the original dungeon and referee with it, and so role-playing went on in Blackmoor and elsewhere. Blackmoor was not the first RPG game that I was in, not by a long shot. Some years previously, I had been involved in a Napoleonic battle in the town of Brownstein, where as a local student leader, I tried to rally resistance to thwart a French attack. I ended up arrested by the Prussian general because I was too fanatical. Prior to that, I found myself as a professor at a South American university trying to pass out leaflets to overthrow El Chife? Not sure. That time I had come prepared with various identity cards, and at the end of the game was flying over the city in a government helicopter, dropping leaflets loaded down with $100,000 to buy off a non-existent attack by a neighboring country and leaving the secret police far away. And lo, even before that, mid-60s, there was a strange little medieval battle where each person represented an heir to the throne faced with a barbarian attack. That time, we actually all united to wipe out the Blighters, but there were a few tense moments. And so it goes back in time to an ancient battle where a Druid priest suddenly phasered an attacking elephant, this one piece of magic in the game, and his last shot, which almost led to the lynching of the referee, me in that case. How did it all start in Blackmoor? I can't really say. I have spent the previous day watching about 5 monster movies on Creature Feature Weekend, Channel 5, reading a Conan book, I can't recall which one, but I always thought they were much the same, and stuffing myself with popcorn doodling on a piece of graph paper. I was also quite tired of my nappy campaign with all its rigid rules and was perhaps rebelling against it. In fact, I'm sure I was. Rules? What rules? Chainmail to handle the combat at first, a system of magic based on animal type, vegetable type, or mineral type with a hodgepodge of spells, populating the dungeon fairly logically, orcs and minions on one level, etc. Magical artifacts, encounter tables when the adventure wanted to go off after bigger and better things, and so on. Is it any wonder why I burned myself out? When stuff didn't work out, different things were tried. Greg Svensson, Pete Gaylord, John Snyder, and others began refereeing. Finally, a trip to Wisconsin and the first out-of-state adventure in Blackmoor, followed by screams of, "We gotta have the rules!" Another trip, more correspondence, long-distance calls, Gadsby expense. Rules were actually written down, but closely guarded by the referee and subject to change without notice if things got a hand, and so on. Excuse me. Why did it catch on so quickly? And again, the person who previously owned this put us a little star here, so I think that they were definitely using this for some sort of reference. So why did it catch on so quickly? Because it offered almost pure escapism and the ability in the game to do anything and everything you wanted to. Gads. Who wouldn't get hooked on game-playing Nirvana like that after years of charts, tables, painting figures, etc.? It was like a breath of fresh air. So by word of mouth, correspondence, and phone calls, it grew and grew. There was no planned growth because the growth was not foreseen. The clamor for more rules was not met when material was assembled and then published to meet the demand. There was no time to wait on matters. Money would not have remained available as others planned similar projects, and so we struck while the iron was hot. And also the rules suffered from the fact that they were hastily put together. In fact, my final draft version never was used because of various deadlines that had been set. But good Lord, the demand and interest was astounding. You had to be there to believe it or not to believe it. Today, there is a tendency to not appreciate the fact that D&D was not that sure of being a success. Both Geenen Games and AH had rejected it. There were no games like that on the market. It was a gamble and not a too likely looking one at that. There were no investors standing about with bags of money or established markets. There were only a few dungeon fanatics with a gleam in their eyes, working their tails off for we knew not what reasons. So bang, there it was, and off it went like a berserk dragon. And you can tell me where it has all ended up today. All right. So, and he continues on. Maybe just one more. Excuse me again. My God. I am making all sorts of noises. So where is it headed? So here's a little insight from 1979 from Dave Arneson on where he thinks Dungeons & Dragons is headed. Or role-playing games, probably. But where is it headed? Computers, video games, and the like, where the game future lies today. Nothing can ever replace a good dungeon master, but then how many people want to play compared to how many good dungeon masters? A well-thought-out program with adequate memory and good graphics, pictures not words, will be a step above the herd of DMs and provide that standardization that has been talked about. Oh, local groups will still be in business, bigger than ever, and the good DMs will still be incomparable, but for the great unwashed, the electronic age will be what they see and get. Enjoy. And yeah, he couldn't have been more true with that. All right, so he goes on here, seems to be talking about a bit more details. I'm not going to linger on too long on this, and continues on and on. So, okay, so philosophy on RPGs. We'll close with that with Arneson. So, RPG is, I feel, a game where the individual character can enhance his abilities and station within the game, though the characters used in play, or through the characters used in play. Not just in the ability to kill, but also trade, magic skill, amassing power, etc. Not having a single set of characteristics that never change from game to game. That's what I feel an RPG should have at its very heart. Many so-called RPGs only pay lip service to it by including characters that can never develop but are always the same. That's not RPG in my book. Or my games either. Ha ha. All right, so there's a little bit of insight and wisdom from Arneson. And I believe this is available on Anna Archive, and I'll put a link into it if you want to read more on what he has to say. Let's see here. So we got a little bit here from Steve Perrin. Let's see here. Steve Perrin, well, he finally comes through with his own version of how everything started for us. Lucky us. All right, let's see here. Steve Perrin, we'll just kind of read a bit briefly on him. My life is role-playing. How many of you out there grew up with a large circle of imaginary playmates to play your solitary games with? They each had distinctive names and personalities, right? Sure were a lot easier to handle than real playmates, weren't they? In my misspent youth, I took great delight in assuming other identities and being Superman or an obscure but heroic knight or a cowboy, soldier, or what have you. Each identity had a distinct but similar personality. I did my best to inveigle with a few playmates I had into taking on other identities to complement my own. I caught on well enough with them that they took their play in entirely different directions, but retained the names I had given them. Now, of course, I'm Stefan de Lorraine, a knight in count in the Society for Creative Anachronism, but that's entirely different, isn't it? Back in my preteens, I had vast collections of toy soldiers, and most of them had separate identities and personalities, transferred over from the imaginary playmates mentioned above. One or two of them even represented me in one of my various identities. Now I have approximately 300 miniature figures of men and monsters, several of which are personality figures representing specific characters I play in FRP games, fantasy role-playing games. But that's entirely different, isn't it? It isn't, of course. I was role-playing as a child, and I'm role-playing now. The only difference is that now I play by rules. And if I had known there were rules when I was a preteen, I would have played with them then. And there would never have been a hiatus of approximately 6 years between packing or giving away my toy soldiers and discovering Tactics 2 at the dorms at San Francisco State. Excuse me again. Any game is role-playing. Chess is abstract. Fantasy role-play tries for reality. Most board games fall somewhere in between, but it's all playing someone, from Grand Commander to novice swordsman, in an escape from reality, which can be far more hum than drum. And thus, underlined by the previous owner of this magazine. So I think he might have been looking for references to define what role-playing games are, which are highlighting escape from reality. So he continues on, and as far as it kind of looks like he's looking at his discovery and whatnot. Again, I'm not going to go into detail, but just see if there's something I can kind of close on here. All right, we'll kind of go here. I dragged in a series of friends. So we're moving on. Within a couple of months, Art had gone south to go back to school, and Hendrik had started college, leaving Ray and me to hold the fort. Okay, so this is his experience within college. I dragged in a series of friends to help out, and the final crew shook down to Ray, me, Steve Henderson, and Warren James. Just where each idea came from is hard to say, but Ray and I carried most of the ball with ideas. Warren did a lot of playtesting, and Steve edited like mad, being invaluable for organization on pruning prolixity. Of course, without Greg Stafford hovering over us and saying, "Going to be ready for Origins." So see, I believe this is the going through the creation of RuneQuest. We'll still be sorting through mounds of paper and trying new slants on things. Some will say we should have done just that, but you never would have seen the rules. Again, sometimes you just got to know when, sometimes it's just done. Some people can say your RPG is done when it's done. Sometimes you just don't have that luxury. In any case, it all worked together, and RuneQuest got out in time for Origins, and now the baby has flown, or fallen, from the nest. We're all really gratified and thoroughly boggled at the response it's gotten. So now I'm a game designer, yet another role. Now I both play and design, constantly trying to have fun and playtest at the same time. For the most part, I succeeded, but life was probably simpler before. Would I go back, undo my participation in the fantasy roleplay Fandango? Do you expect me to say yes? Fantasy roleplay provides a creative outlet in play as well as rules, writing, and world creating that I have not found anywhere else. I think I just second all of you who read this when I say my life is role-playing. All right, so yeah, that was a bit much. So those of you who haven't who haven't clicked off yet, thank you for sticking through. A little bit of insight from Dave Arneson and Steve Perrin. All right, so moving on. So we've got a bit of information here. A little short thing from Steve Marsh, Research and Rules. Let's see, what does he say? Define the thing to be written about. Define the user situation. Get acquired with the material. Simulate the rules in your present framework. Understand the why. So what is he talking about? The temptation to write rules is one of the sweetest in the world. Giving into it can be delightful. Giving into it can also dump a very messy pile of crap on your head. The first level of research is encountering. Example: a person sees Kobudo nunchucks in action and think, "Hey, that would be just the thing to write about." Unfortunately, that sometimes is all the research done. Consider you've done something and want to write rules defining it. You could just sit down and intuitively put it onto paper and work through it with some logic. Some people can pull this kind of writing off with ease. Most of us cannot. What follows is a set of ideas about rules writing. They come from research and much negative personal experience. So he has got five sets of rules, or 5 steps or rules to assist you with rules writing. So 1, define the thing to be written about. Okay, and then now redefine it in terms of already established equivalents. Define the user situation. Redefine the concept in terms of game equivalents. 3, get acquainted with the material. This means A, see it in use, or B, check its historical evolution. 4, simulate the rules in your present framework. You must define the framework into which this rule section will fit, and you must be able to manipulate the framework. And then finally, understand the whys. Know why your intuition says what it says. This is what theory is all about. Now present the rules. The above results from study as to why people misunderstand personal writings of yours truly, and from analyzing the sloppiness of many rule sets. The process can be used to adapt a weapon, a monster, or an entire rulebook for role-playing use. When combined with research of some depth, more than one quick peek, the method can add a great deal to any set of rules. All right, so we've got a D&D variant here from Mike Gunderloy. With this issue, we conclude the series on the specialty mages. Look for Mike in future issues of Different Worlds. So let's see, what do we have here? We've got Mages of Lightning. These are the first to take power for the sake of power, those who spurn the search for knowledge. So essentially creating specialty wizards here and then associating the appropriate spells that he for them that he thinks would work with these particular types of mages. The mages of crystal. These are the builders and nurturers, those who vow to fight the lightning mages and their bolts of destruction. Okay, so we've got opposing, essentially schools, if you want to call them that. Stating here, mages of lightning. Alignment is strictly amoral. And then as far as the mages of crystal, their alignment is generally lawful and good. Carrying on, we got the mages of acid. These are servants of the snail god. I want to know more about the snail god, the consumer in the dark, the spreader of slime and disease, the one who gnaws, the lover of undead. All right, and the mages of acid, they are never good, though. Alignment varies, but they are never good. And again, associated spells that come with them, and looks like they mix up here magic user and clerical spells from D&D. And is that it? And what is this? Anti-life. Anti-life is totally different. Is a totally different biology based on a reversal of normal life. All that is poisonous to normal life is wholesome to anti-life, and vice versa. Fair enough. And then snails, as referred to in these rules, snails are not harmless little soft creatures with spiral shells. Rather, they are the spawn of the snail god himself. They are not equal to his special sons of the slime and power, yet they are potent in their own right. Hell yes. Then we got the mages of the wind. These are the special servers of the Raven Lord, eater of carrion, pecker of eyes, slayer of chicks, bane of snails in the air and on the ground. Wow. Okay, so I'm really interested in what this type of a mythology that he's creating here. So. Anyways, they are never totally evil, even though alignment varies. Okay, so we've got, continuing on with Clint, Bigglestone, role-playing, and how to do it, an immodest proposal. Okay, how does it? Of course, this is going to be a lot here. Let's see here. We're going to read the description of it. Much has been written and spoken in the last 5 years on the subject of role-playing games. Ooh boy, I've got a bit of a shocker for you, Clint Bigglestone from 1979. Even more has been written in the past 50 years. So, sadly, it mostly seems to consist of long discussions with regard to the damage done by fireballs, the propriety of inventing 47 varieties of dragons, and even wrangling over whose reworking of what variation of which original or maybe not so original rules are best. Again. 1979 compared to 2023. Excuse me. Yes, some things never change. All right. Somewhere in here, we all seem to have lost sight of the key thing about the games we play, the role-playing. The first issue of Different Worlds was full of autobiographical details of individual lives and their relationship with RPGs. The major thing which stood out about these articles, as I see it, was that no two people appear to agree on exactly what role-playing is. Therefore, I offer the following highly immodest proposal in an attempt to define role-playing as well as give people some hints on how it is done. All right, so what does Clint say here? We'll kind of see if we can hit the highlights. Role-playing, like all good acting, is the art of being that whom you are not. Okay. How now do I expect you to put aside your entire cultural and familiar background in one stroke? Am I expecting your fangs to drip with chaotic evil slime like saliva, or your pointy ears to ring with words heard in your immortal elven youth? Of course not. There is no way any of us can make an elaborate switch to another personality short of certifiable insanity. Even if we try our best, some residue of ourselves will remain. However, there is a technique, a method of acting, if you will, which seems to have been shared by the best players I know, which has allowed them to adapt well to other personalities for gaming purposes. This technique also allows the adaptation to take over an extended period of time, thus causing a minimal dislocation of the player's own personality. The purpose of this article is to acquaint the novice player with this technique. All right, so let's see here. And he carries on and on and on. And let's see, what's something else we can highlight? Being someone else. Most of us are not born actors and actresses, and we need to get used to the idea of being someone else rather slowly. The best ways seem to be to do it like this. First, pick 1 or 2 characteristics who are almost like you, but not quite. Take them through a few runs until you're comfortable with foibles which are not your own. Now is the time to learn the most important fact of all with regard to RPGs. Well, lay it on me. You must remember at all times and all situations that it is just a game. Yes. Yes. That is, yep. You must remember at all times and all situations that it is just a game. Those wizards, elves, clerics at all, aren't real people. He continues. You must not get so caught up in their lives, quotations, that you lose track of or develop complications in your own. Wow. Laying a bit of wisdom on me. Or on us. And that, again, holds true then as it does today. These pencil and paper and or tin-lead folk exist to entertain you and your friends and expand your experience horizon. Do not, under any circumstances, let them run your life. Again, do not, under any circumstances, let them run your life. Well, that little bit right there to me is worth the price of admission for this game because, again, I can't really say too much on how people conducted themselves back in 1979, but I do feel quite a few people in the hobby today could use a little bit of this wisdom. If you become too attached to a character to the point that it would emotionally affect you if something happened to that character, then get rid of that character. Kill it off, retire it to running an inn for indigent NPCs, give it away, but do something. The penalty for not doing so is to lose track of the fact that the second half of the term role-playing game is the word game. GMs in situations where people have lost control over their alternative personality are called psychiatrists. And most of them make lousy referees. Okay. That's something to chew on there. Okay. And he continues on. As you become secure in the knowledge that you can successfully handle a slightly different you, introduce a character or two who is no different from you than others, but has a different moral orientation, and a little bit there. And then 3, play a character whose sex differs from yours. Let's face it, 2 individuals of the same gender from 2 different cultures often have more in common with each other than 2 individuals of the same culture but different genders. Okay, well, when you take the step, and it's a big one, don't go it alone. Talk to your spouse, lover, sibling, parent, friend about what it's like to be of their sex. Ask how they react to common situations, remarks, conflicts. Find out what are these common circumstances for them. For those of you who are straight/gay, take the same steps with regard to communicating with your gay/straight friends and relatives. That way, not only do you get to know how to play your character, you also get to spend a little time, a few steps maybe, in the other person's moccasins. Whatever you do, though, in playing any type of character, do not rely on stereotypes, not even for comedy, for your models. They're seldom accurate and almost always demeaning. Okay, 4, now you get to take another big step. You get to play someone with a personality much apart from your own. Start with larger-than-life characters because broad exaggerations is much easier to play than deep but subtle differences. All right, and then he goes on to talk about going through changes, and GM playing a world. And a little bit of advice for GM, and role-playing and religion. I've saved the sticky part until last. Religion. I've read about religious wars. They sound awful, and I'm not interested in starting one in miniature, either as an author or as a GM, because religion is almost totally a matter of faith and is an emotional rather than rational belief. No one should even pretend to tell anyone else how to play the adherent, priest, paladin, or fanatic of any religion. But I will say that no matter what religions you play, my previous comments about not using stereotypes as a guide goes double here. Religion, if it was highly important to a character, will have a profound impact on other facets of that character's personality and will govern more than anything else the company that character will keep. Religion transcends all considerations of race, size, color, and economic and social status. Finally, arguments over religion will kill an otherwise successful gaming group faster than anything else I know. It's a wise player and GM who knows when it is time to stop playing and re-enter the real world. That should be done whenever a player or players have stopped being able to distinguish between the actions of other players and the actions of the characters of those players. In other words, the game should end the minute the players start taking the character's remarks personally. So when you roleplay touchy subjects, even if the other guy seems to have tongue planted firmly in cheek, you should approach those subjects with sufficient reverence to forestall any adverse reaction until you are secure in the attitudes of the other players. That too is role-playing, and we do it every day in life. So wow, Mr. Bigglestone or Bigglestone has quite a bit of wisdom drops here. So again, if this is available in digital form, I mean, you'd like to read this role-playing and how to do it in its entirety, look for the link in the description. Interesting. Very, very, very interesting and relevant. So, and we have quick plugs here. So there are some things here that they're promoting. Caliban, Arduin Dungeon #1. Militia and Mercenaries, a RuneQuest Source Pack Gamma. This is the third in a series of computer-generated RuneQuest character books. In Search of the Unknown, Dungeon Module B1. And Worm's Footnotes, #6. The Chaosium's in-house organ for RuneQuest. Quick Quincy Gazette 12. I have no idea what that is. Wargaming 4, no idea what that is. APA Dud 22, publication of the New York Dungeons & Dragons Amateur Publishing Association. And The Apprentice 3, the Canadian magazine of medieval fantasy gaming. Okay, carrying on. Dennis Sustare presents the world of Druid's Valley, a Bunny and Burrows campaign. Did I say Burrows? Bunny and Burrows. So we've got a nice map here with quite a bit of detail. In order to add a campaign to your Bunnies and Burrows game. A little advertisement for some game cons, and looks like the states. Michicon, #8. DinoCon in San Mateo, California. Origins, #79 in Pennsylvania. NanCon, 88-2 in Houston, Texas. And Gen Con 12 in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. So we've got Raymond Turney from an idea by Mark Chalinskas. The Three-Feathered Rivals Cult, a new RuneQuest cult, I guess. The Three-Feathered Rivals Cult worships three great spirits, represented by three great birds of Prax. Sunhawk, associated with the runes of truth and fire. The Raven, associated with the runes of illusion and darkness. Thunderbird, associated with the runes of mobility and air. As might be guessed, with the collection of runes this cult is associated with, and it has an unusual history. All right, so we've got some details here about these new cults, and it gives you the founding of the cult, along with relations with authorities, becoming a lay member, becoming an initiator rune priest, special battle magic spells, and special rune magic spells. Carrying on. Okay. So what do we have here? A letter from Gigi. Let's see here. Not entirely sure what that is. Let's see. Congratulations, Steer, on the premiere issue of Different Worlds. This is to Tadashi. We RPGers have been waiting a long time for a professional magazine like yours. Gigi has no doubt that Different Worlds will become as widely known and as respected as Fire and Movement. I did find a number of typos, though, and that cover was difficult to read. Don't be shy about communicating. Is she talking about herself in first person? Okay. Okay. I'm not going to read this whole letter. It's fairly in-depth. But I must wonder about your list of notable notables in RPG. Correct me if I'm wrong, but none of those nice TSR people contributed to the My Life and Role-Playing article. Why was that? I did see at least Gygax, I think, on the back of White Dwarf 11, wearing some sort of metallic teddy. For Gamma World, yes. Very sexy. And why did White Dwarf have only 16 pages of articles this issue? They are longer pages, but goodness me. David Berman, The Apprentice 3, says White Dwarf is the best of the slicks anywhere. You don't use clay-coated interior pages to Tadashi, but I thought that your cover was very smooth indeed. Send him a copy of Different Worlds quick. All right, so it just goes on to essentially give her insight into the issues here. So she mentions Greg Kostikian, Steve Jackson's A Fantasy Trip, Dave Arneson's recent interview never mentions, I assume that's Gary Gygax. These professional feuds are so juicy, and I agree entirely with Dave that designers, not companies, should receive all those awards at Origins. Designers get little enough. All right. So different views. So letters to the magazine. I'll just read blah 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 blah. Just one. Just here, dear Tanashi. I just finished reading Different Worlds premiere issue. I was highly impressed overall. It's off to a good start. The essays I found interesting. It's hard to say what a beginner would feel about all this talk, but it does give a lot of background thinking on the hobby. I am particularly happy at the fact that you are listing major fanzines for the information of your readers. This is an excellent way to make friends. I agree. So, John T. Sapienza Jr., a new Cleric cure system. Dungeons & Dragons system of wounds and cures is based on a theory of generalized bodily health status. Unlike RuneQuest and other specific location system, D&D assigns points representing a character's life force to the body as a whole. As long as the body contains at least one hit point, it will continue to function normally, but at 0 hit points, it is dead. Cure spells restore hit points to a living body, while resurrection spells restore life in either a minimum of hit points, raise dead, or all hit points, raise dead fully, while the reversed resurrection spells drain all the victim's hit points at once. This suggests that there is, or logically should be, a relationship between the cure spells and the resurrection spells, which could be more fully spelled out in the clerical spell system. All right, so goes on to provide examples for updating things such as cure hold person, cure major wounds, cure disease, cure strong person, cure hold monster, cure critical damage, and replacement and complete cure, and so on. Along with its level progression. Okay. So the annual Strategist Club Awards for 1978. Who won? Outstanding. These are the votes. So outstanding game of 1978. Who should you vote on? Assault on Crete, Gamma World, Next War, Cross of Iron, or Source of the Nile? Outstanding game design of 1978. Assault on Crete, Cross of Iron, Next War, Operation Crusader, or Source of the Nile. Outstanding miniature rules of 1978. Beream and Galley, Fire and Steel, Gamma World, RuneQuest, miniature rules. Okay. Outstanding miniature figure line of 1978. Grenadier, Ralph Arthur, Heritage, CNC, Grenadier, Martian Metals, minifigs, and outstanding war game publication of 1978, The Dragon, Fire Movement, The General, Strategy and Tactics, and White Dwarf. Who are you voting for? And here we have a full-page advertisement for the wonderful Dark Tower, fantasy game made by Janelle Jaquez. from Judges Guild, created for and approved for use with advanced D&D. You ain't ever had it so bad, and that's incredible indeed. And then in closing, as we wrap up this edition of Different Worlds, People's Computers, the oldest personal computer magazine, is now the newest, is now recreational computing, focusing on games and challenges, fantasy and science fiction, free software, languages, and music, art, robotics, reviews, opinions, and controversy. And then here on the back inside cover at Excalibre, or is that Excalibur? Whatever. We believe in science fiction, pure and simple. That's why I'm just going to call it Excalibre. Science fiction games are so playable, pure and simple. Quasar. 400 space vessels are engaged in a violent interaction by turn 2. Cyborg, the ultimate adventure, is an adventure game that pits a beautiful princess, her Amazon companions, and powerful cyborg guardians against a horde of hideous mutants, evil wizards, and deadly terrain. Go ahead, send a self-addressed stamp envelope for a free 4-page catalog. Only $8.95 and $12. And then last, at the back cover, what do we have here? We have a full back cover ad for Chaosium. 5 reasons why gaming is the fastest growing hobby in the world. And 5 for summer. So what do we have here? We got the Cults of Prax. We've got Reich, Raiders and Traders, Foes, First Order Enemy Stats, and then finally Snake Pipe Hollow. $9, $12, $12, $9, and $5. Be sure and write Chaosium at Box 6302, Albany, California, 94706 to get more information. So there we go. That has been Different Worlds, Issue 3, June, July 1979. And yeah, I mean, a nice mix, a very nice mix of reviews, add-ons, and different things to provide some extra content for your game, Bunnies and Burrows, Dungeons and Dragons, RuneQuest, and likewise some very insightful opinions and perspectives about role-playing games as they were in 1978, and shocking enough, still hold true today. And I'm probably not in its entirety, but still something to chew upon and think about, in regards to the philosophy of role-playing and role-playing games. So, thank you all. This has been a long one, as they tend to be. If you stuck around this long, thank you for going with me as I took a deep dive into this issue of Different Worlds. I rather enjoy this. I may not be doing them as frequently, just because it is a lot. It is a lot to go through, depending on the magazine, and a lot of information to parse. And not sure how many people enjoy taking the ride as I do that. But again, if I find this digitally, look for Different Worlds in the description. If you're enjoying this series, go ahead and let me know. That'd be great. If you think that it's a bit long-winded, I am open for constructive criticism without a problem. But if you're enjoying this series, I've got I think the next thing I'm going to look at, it's either going to be another Dragon magazine, probably one from the closer to the 80s, or I believe I've got a couple. I think it's Imagine magazines that I may be taking a look at also. But this has been yet another episode of It's Pronounced Zine. And thank you all for watching. If you feel so inclined, please give a like, please subscribe. Definitely appreciate it. And if you're looking for a podcast to listen to and you're not aware of it yet, definitely check out Titterpigs, the RPG podcast that I do with my friend Keith from Rolling Boxcars. Likewise, a link will be in the description for that too. And everyone, have a wonderful day.